you should do this for the rest of your life. Rather than looking at a job as just a paycheck, right? Be looking at it in terms of the skills that it's teaching you. Like how are you adding to your skill stack by having this job? Because then a 6-month experience doesn't feel like a joke and a waste because you got some skills out of it.
True. Yeah.
Some of the best jobs I've had recently, despite running my own business, I worked as a mental health clinician for 6 months. I worked as a special education teacher for 6 months, and I worked as a principal for 8 months. Oh my God, did I learn a lot from those jobs because I aggressively looked for the skills as I did them. And the thing that was cool about aggressively looking at the skills I was building, it increased my performance because I was being intentional about doing stuff while I was there.
ADHD Rewired, episode 344. This is the podcast for those of us with really good intentions and a slightly wandering attention. I'm Eric Tivers. I'm a licensed clinical social worker by training and a coach by design. I'm your host and I have ADHD. ADHD Rewired is more than just a podcast. We are a community. We are wired for connection and you are not alone. Go to ADHDrewired.com to learn how you can join us in our free secret Facebook group. Get additional resources for every episode, including links to any resources we mention on today's show. You can support us on Patreon, sign up for our email newsletter. You can request podcast postcards to distribute to your clients and support groups. And you can learn all about our intensive online video-based coaching and accountability groups. You can do all of this at our website, ADHDrewired.com. We know that starting is the hardest part, so let's get started. Welcome back to another episode of ADHD Rewired. We are here for our live Q&A. This is month 6 of live Q&As in COVID, and we've been doing this Q&A for about 3 years, but today we are without the man of hacking your ADHD, Will Curb. Has no power right now. So, he's not here, but we are here with Brendan. Hey, Brendan.
Hi, how are you?
I am living a dream. I don't know if it's the dream, but it's a dream.
I'm with you. It's definitely a dream of some sort.
I had the craziest dream last week. I thought it was end of last week, and it's almost worth sharing. Should I share it? I'm going to share it because I've already shared it because now everyone's going to be like, because I hate when people go like, oh, I want to tell you something. And then go, oh, never mind. Because now I'm like, all my brain is thinking, what is it? What is it? What is it? What is it? All right. So here's my dream. So I had this dream that I was at a party. So I missed one of my coaching sessions. Okay. Like completely like forgot about it because I was at a party, and at this party was Barack Obama, who was sitting like outside on this like patio. But the backyard, I just started watching the show Ozarks, and the backyard had this like cliff that was similar to that cliff that they were on. I'm only like 2 episodes into Ozarks, but like, so that part was in there. But then I went indoors, to like get some food, and there were like a lot of people there. And, on my way to like get some food, I tripped over a baby. And then everybody just stopped and looked at me, but the baby was okay. And that was all I remember from the dream. Oh, no.
You want me to analyze your dream like young? Because I'm actually really good at that.
Okay. Wait. There's one more part to it. And then the whole time I was debating whether or not I should try to take a selfie with Barack Obama. Okay. Now go ahead.
All right. It might be vaguely politically charged because Barack Obama's in it. So like fair warning, right? But here's how I would interpret that dream. First of all, you feel like the loss or neglect of responsibility in just disregarding your client, right?
Ooh.
So then you're going through this party, but then you leave the party and go outside where you see Barack Obama, the former president of the United States, next to a cliff. Bring your own subtext. Then you come in and trip over innocence.
Ooh.
Right? Bringing all of the festivities and humor and enjoyment of this party to a stop because you've crushed the innocence. Any more than that, it's going to be way more politically charged than it needs to be. But I think that you're revealing your stance on current events and having the stream.
Yes. And if you're in the US, please vote and please register to vote. Vote early, vote often. No, not the often part, but vote early, register to vote. It's really
only
important.
Vote once.
Only vote once. Despite what number 45 wants you to do. So, all right, we are here for a live Q&A, so we should answer some people's questions, and we'll get to more dream interpretation at some other point. So we have Ben. Let me get Ben unmuted. Hey, Ben.
Hi.
I hope you enjoyed the dream interpretation there, but you have a question all about strategies and novelty. So tell us about that.
Yeah, so basically I've just changed careers. I was working in the NHS as a healthcare professional. I just got this awesome opportunity working at university now, which is great, and it just really fits me. So to start off, I've applied as many strategies that seem to be working well, mostly learned from reWired, which is fantastic, so thank you for that. My concern is the problem is I suffer from the novelty effect. So quite often, I enjoy a new thing. Like I just got your app as well, Epic Win. It's so good. You were just talking about that with Rick Green, and that really works for me. But then, unfortunately, the novelty wears off, and eventually I get disappointed and feel that kind of shame that I haven't been able to kind of stick with it. I'm intent. I've got the why, and I need to do well at this job. So how do I ensure that I can stick to these strategies? Any sort of mechanisms you can give me that will ensure longevity with the strategies?
So it sounds like you have some good strategies, but they kind of run out when the novelty wears off, which sounds like you have ADHD, because that is absolutely part of the picture. And so instead of looking at trying to find the tool that is going to be the thing that lasts forever, just kind of accepting that sometimes we need novelty in our tools and sort of anticipate that sometimes we need to, spice it up with a new app or change the fonts or the background or whatever it is, so our brain kind of keeps paying attention to it. And one thing that you can do is, depending on how often you find that novelty is wearing off, is try to sort of extend that period of time a little bit. So let's say you're all right, every 3 to 4 weeks, I seem to stop paying attention to the app that I'm using that's helping me remember what I need to do. So maybe 3 to 4 weeks into your calendar, put a note in there that says, hey, I'm 4 weeks into using Epic Win, for example. Can you go another week? Right. And just so almost you're asking yourselves questions in your calendar to try to extend that. I think when it comes to sort of the task stuff, that's the easiest kind of thing to bring in new tools. I really encourage people to try to stick with the same calendar for as long as possible, because that's a harder tool to switch up a bunch. But yeah, novelty absolutely is part of the picture that we're looking at. Brendan, what are your thoughts?
You are in a new job. Talk to people and make connections immediately.
Yeah.
Start making friends, especially friends who are doing stuff that's similar to what you're doing, so that you can have those side conversations, depending on where you are with COVID and whether side conversations can even happen. But if you're connected to people who are doing stuff that's similar to you, when they say things like, yeah, I got to get my grades in, or I have to submit for this, program or event or something, then you can go, oh, right, I totally forgot all about that thing. I'm really glad that I talked to you. So having some connections, some social cred in your new job will allow you to have some external motivation to go along with your strategies and tactics and things, and keep the why top of mind. Both, I want to do well because I want to do well and keep the job, but also the why is social pressure of wanting to look good in front of my peers and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that's really good. Thank you. I think that we've been mostly over like this for meetings, but face-to-face is out at the moment. But I think a big thing that I have been proud of is I've been advocating as well. So I've dropped that kind of stress that I had in my last job of letting people know. I've been really open and upfront about the fact I have ADHD. So I to find an opportunity to drop it into the conversation. And it's actually made me feel a bit more kind of comfortable with the whole thing, because they kind of, I don't know, they're preluded, aren't they? It's there, it's out in the open, and they've been really accepting, actually. And so that's helped as well.
And building from a client that I'm working with right now who found comfort and motivation in this particular strategy, she started talking to people very openly about, like, this is the stuff that I'm amazing at.
Yeah.
And this is the stuff that I struggle with. And it let her feel positive about what she's good at. And when she connects to someone who's really good at doing the thing, but bad at coming up with the big idea of what the thing should be,
right,
she doesn't feel as bad seeing that person do the thing that she came up with the idea for, because she knows she contributed the idea.
Right.
So that might be helpful too.
Cool.
Yeah. That's really good advice. Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks, Ben. All right. Let's grab another question. There's actually one that I thought was kind of interesting based on what I saw you had posted. I think it was today or yesterday on Facebook about losing motivation.
How do you deal with losing motivation / productivity for long periods of time at work, i.e. sit down to work and all sense of motivation goes away for weeks? That one?
Yeah, that one. So I don't know if that person wanted to go live, but let's just go ahead and answer it.
It's hard. On my end, some stuff that has worked for me is sitting down at work for me is in my house. So going outside has been gigantic, like just sitting in my backyard and doing stuff. Read as change locations. It doesn't have to be necessarily outside, but going somewhere else might be useful. Walking on my treadmill for 20 minutes before I try to do work is gigantic, getting some of that exercise going in advance. And then specifically an email strategy that I've been using is I got one of those like click counters. Have I talked about this before? I got a click.
The pitch counter.
Yeah, the pitch counter, or like people going into a concert or a bar or whatever, like just keeping the number tally. So I got one of those and I use it whenever I reply to an email. So I click when I reply to the email. And then when I'm done, I have this number of emails that I replied to. And that gives me my dopamine, because I've come to realize that my biggest challenge with email is that it's so ethereal. It's so like you send the email out and like sometimes they reply back to you and sometimes they don't. And sometimes what you're saying feels important and sometimes it doesn't. It's just like a 3-sentence nothing. So that ethereal nature of it undermines my ability to even interact with it, and having something concrete like a number at the end is useful.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting, Brendan, from your posts. You're talking about how you're in registration for your parent coaching group, and which I know is work that you love, and you're struggling with the motivation to do private registration stuff. And I've been there before too, and it's like this really sort of weird thing. And I think for me, one of the things I was finding is that, because I used to do 3 groups at a time for quite some time. And I remember hitting this point where I'm just like, I just can't get the energy to like keep doing this, which made me really kind of question, like, am I doing too much? And I have answered that question. The answer was yes. Because when I start like not wanting to do the things that I love, like that's a real cue for checking in on your own burnout. So I was listening to something, I was on NPR, and they had this, it was something on like productivity and working from home. And it said on average since COVID, at least with knowledge workers, that, people are on average working 3 hours a day more, not a week, a day.
That's crazy. That
is crazy. So we really have to be mindful, because we're still not, I think, over the hump of this. Like we are like maybe a third of the way through, maybe, so I think that if you're finding that you're struggling with the motivation in a different way, like if it's, part of ADHD, there's a motivational challenge there, right? If like we're not interested in it, it's going to be challenging. But if you're finding that it's even more so, check in with kind of your what you're doing on self-care and, your burnout.
And also be mindful of how much of what you're doing is the same thing with different window dressing, right? So like I've come to realize for a dude with executive functioning challenges, I do a ton of planning. Like I do a crazy amount of planning, and I've gotten really good at it, even though I have those executive functioning challenges. But just rattling off like a typical week for me, there's finding clients, coaching group stuff, right? Like getting coaching group scheduled, emailing people, that sort of thing. There's the podcast, signing people up, editing it, posting it, that kind of stuff. I run a weekly D&D game for my kids. That's still planning. My kids and their friends, right? There's 6 kids in the group. I run a monthly D&D game for me and my friends. I run an intermittent game for my my old college buddies. So that's all planning. Typically, when it comes to social stuff, I'm doing a lot of the planning and initiating of that stuff, whether it's a movie in the backyard or going someplace on an adventure. My kids are home right now. I'm doing a lot of the planning for what that looks like in terms of everything from what are we going to have for lunch to what are we going to do today to how am I going to get them off the screens because I've got work I have to do, but they can't be in front of screens all the time. And then when the emotional stuff hits the fan, like happens in COVID, I'm navigating that. And that's planning and emotional carrying too. So like when my wife asked me what I want for dinner, I'm like, I don't care. And it's a lot of it is because I just can't make another decision. Like there's a ton of decision fatigue happening.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, there's so much goes into motivation. And I think it's really important just to understand motivation through the lens of neurology instead of, character. Because it's not. Mm-hmm. It's an issue of neurology. All right, let's go to Ella, who has a question I think very suited for you. Hey there, Ella.
Hi, Eric.
How are you?
Okay.
So you have a question around the wall of awful.
Well, it's funny because, it's kind of now gotten to be this thing and people just say wall of awful, but, it is awful. And that's why it's called that. Uh-huh. And so you said something on Will's podcast about a door.
Yep.
Finding a door. So could you give some examples of a door?
Let me back up a little bit.
Yeah, give a little context for people who are the first time, like the wall of what?
Right. So the wall of awful.
The hall of waffles? The
hall of waffles. So the wall of awful it's the emotional impact of ADHD, right? It's the consequence of repeated failure. It's really a trauma model. And I'm the guy who made it up. So we've got this emotional barrier between us and the task that we want to engage in. That's the wall of awful. Because when I'm going to check my email, I get this like anxiety or dread because email is hard for me or whatever, or making a phone call or something like that. There's a few ways people try to get past it. One is they stare at it, which doesn't get you past the wall of awful. You're just stuck. The second one is they try to go around it, but you're never going to go around the wall of awful. It's infinitely wide because it's a metaphor. And I made it up, so you're never going to walk around it.
I love that explanation. Because I made it up.
And then the other way to get past it that works but is unhealthy is to Hulk smash your way through the wall of awful, which is when you just get mad and you're like, fine, I'll mow the lawn, rah, or whatever. Or you're like, why do I suck so much? What's wrong with me? Why am I the worst person ever? I guess I'll go mow the lawn because I finally made myself feel bad enough that it would feel worse it feels worse to make myself feel bad than it does to mow the lawn, right? The two that work and are healthy, but before I go there, that, by the way, is fight, flight, and freeze. Fight is Hulk smash. Flight is go around, and freeze is just staring at the wall. The two that get you through it that are healthy are climbing it, which is like sitting with the emotions and dealing with them and all that kind of stuff. Mindfulness and those sorts of things. But it takes a while. Quicker is to put a door in the wall. And really, that's about changing your emotional state. And that's what I mean when I say put a door in it. So anything that's going to change your emotional state is worth trying. You want to make sure you're not numbing. You want to make sure you're not like, well, I should go mow the lawn, so I'm going to watch some home and garden television for the next 6 hours. And I'm not really getting motivation to mow the lawn. I'm just numbing out by watching HGTV, right? Like that's not the plan. Instead, find something that's motivated. And it might be home and garden. Like it might be HGTV, but just commit to 1 half-hour show and then go make your yard look like that or whatever. Or you might want to listen to music. You might want to go somewhere else. Like I mentioned earlier, I go outside to do some of the stuff that's hard for me, and that helps me get rolling. Exercise, another thing I mentioned earlier, that's going to help you get moving. Getting a body double, getting a buddy to help you out, either over Zoom or 6 feet away from you in a parking lot for all I care. Like that's okay too. That's the kind of stuff you want to do to put a door in your wall. Am I answering your question?
Yes.
Do you want to maybe walk through a specific scenario, Ella, and maybe we can help you define what that wall or that door looks like?
This is being willing to get some more concrete ideas about, not ideas, knowledge of what finances I have at my disposal. This is one of those things that I prefer to ignore and, figure, well, if I run out of money before I die, I'll just walk into the sea or ask a friend. And Rick of Rinfa is very, very persuasive, Rinfa, but I feel it's like kind of if you've been afraid to go to the gym because then you meet Rick outside and he says, I'm your coach and this is what we're going to do. And so maybe he's not like that, but it's a little, I feel I'm not quite there yet. I kind of have to, have to get some cracks in the.
Yeah.
And I like what you said, the door is changing the emotional state. It's like.
And in this case, right, you want to do both. You want to put a door in it, but you also want to climb it, because if we try to rely solely on putting a door in the wall of awful, you're going to burn yourself out emotionally. Like at some point, you've got to face the wall and figure out what's going on. And when it's finances, and I obviously know nothing about you, so if I guess too close to home, I apologize in advance. But when it comes to finances, like it's not just, I don't like math or I don't like numbers. Like that's not what's going on. It's there potentially, but often it's about self-worth. And it's about, because in a capitalist society, like how much money you have equals how valuable you are. That's just the way it goes. So depending on how much income we have coming in, how much money we've made over the course of our lives, what our career decisions have been or have not been, all of that stuff gets wrapped up in what are my finances in this moment today? And so navigating that stuff, that's climbing the wall, but that's probably important too, in order to help you put a door in it more easily.
So hopefully that was helpful. And there was some side conversation, Brendan, about the Hall of Waffles. And instead of Hulk smashing through it, you can just eat your way through it.
That's a true story.
Let's take a quick break. And we have a bunch of other questions that we want to get to when we come back. So we will be right back. Support for ADHD Rewired comes from ADHD Rewired's coaching community, which includes our coaching and accountability groups and our alumni membership community. Have you just started listening to the podcast and heard an ad about the coaching and accountability groups? There are already close to 100 people who have joined our winter interest list for coaching. The next coaching season starts in just about 12 weeks. So if you are interested in our intense coaching groups that meet 3 days a week for 10 weeks, go to coachingrewired.com and click on that red button to add your name to our winter interest list. This way you will get any emails that have to do with signing up for the next coaching sessions. Don't wait. Join us this January. Why not start out a brand new year investing in yourself? Are you looking for more accountability? Do you want to learn how to set goals and achieve them? Do you thrive working in a team setting? Then ADHD Rewired's coaching and accountability groups are for you. Go to coachingrewired.com to learn all about our coaching groups. Then click on the big red button at the top of the page and add your name to our winter interest list. So whether you're brand new to the podcast and interested in coaching, or you've been thinking about joining our coaching groups for a while now, take the first step. Go to coachingrewired.com. That's coachingrewired.com. If you are new to this podcast, we want you to know that we have 2 other podcasts on the ADHD Rewired Podcast Network. We have a short podcast with Will Curb called Hacking Your ADHD. They're about 15 minutes each. We have another podcast called ADHD Essentials, and that is with Brendan Mahan. It's a similar format to this one with a focus on parents and families and educators. Both of those podcasts are available on the same app you are listening to this podcast on right now. And be on the lookout at the end of this year, beginning of next year, we are going to be launching 2 more podcasts on the ADHD reWired podcast network. We'll be launching one that centers all around diversity and the intersectionality of ADHD and other kind of identities. And another one focusing on women and ADHD. We are really excited. They're kind of getting going right now. So be on the lookout or listen for that. We will have more information about that coming up, and you'll get to meet those hosts on an upcoming Q&A. Both Hacking Your ADHD, ADHD Essentials, and future podcasts to be announced soon are all part of the ADHD reWired Podcast Network. And you can join me and Will Curb and Brendan Mahan. Those are the hosts of Hacking Your ADHD and ADHD Essentials today, if you are listening to this shortly after it got released in your podcast feed. Today, October 13th at 1:30 p.m. Eastern. Go to ADHDrewired.com/events for this and all upcoming live Q&As. You can join us every second Tuesday of the month at 10:30 a.m. Pacific, 1:30 p.m. Eastern for an hour of live Q&A. Register for free at ADHDrewired.com/events and get to meet our new podcast hosts that will be joining the network in the new year. That's ADHDrewired.com/events. We hope to see you at our next live Q&A today on Tuesday, October 13th at 1:30 p.m. Eastern. That's ADHDrewired.com/events. All right, we are back. Let's find another question. Here's kind of maybe an easy one. Sheila asked, are there many career counselors for people with ADHD? Do you guys know career counseling for young people with ADHD? I do personally know of someone who is a career counselor who definitely likes working with people with ADHD. So I'm going to give her a free shout out. And Jane Hardy, you're welcome. She's, I think, I think she's in Tennessee, but I know she's been working on Zoom for a while. But yeah, I mean, also you can Google career counselors, ADHD. Brendan, do you have anything to add to that one?
Yeah, no, I'm with you. That's, I've done that in the past. There's definitely people out there with ADHD coaches and career counselors where that combines. You could probably even look up ADHD coaches, and a lot of them would be able to do career coaching. I would imagine. So, and if they can't, then just find someone else.
All right, here's another question. And just so y'all know, I am favorable to the really short questions. So if you want to increase your chances of me answering your question, short is sweet. Richard asked, besides being hardcore at getting to bed on time, what are good ways to want to become a morning person?
Get a dog.
Ooh, that's a good idea.
Because that'll force you to wake up, feed the dog, take the dog out. Like then you're up.
I think also, there's so much to this question. I actually really like this question. So first of all, my first question would be, why do you want to become a morning person? Is it because everyone says you should? Because I don't think that's a great reason to want to become a morning person. It's if there's compelling evidence for you as to why becoming a morning person would be helpful in your life, keep that why really present. That means you're like writing a couple sentences down and then like framing that in your bedroom. So you're actually reading it every day. So you have that compelling why on a regular basis. Maybe you have a bedtime alarm, and instead of it saying go to bed, have the alarm actually tell you what that compelling why is. Right. So that can be a helpful thing. Yes. So calculate all or like add a list of all the positive benefits that you see, as why becoming a morning person would be helpful.
Also, like, figure out what you're looking forward to the next day. Right? Like that, because that's a piece of the why. That's a much more short-term why as opposed to a longer-term big picture why. But if you're looking forward to something the following day, that could help you get up. And then also, and you might even journal stuff, right? Like that. I went through a phase where that was useful for me. I know a buddy of mine does it to this day. You get up and you just write for 3 minutes, 4 minutes. What's going to be good today? What are you doing today? Why is today a thing that you care about? That can add to the why as well. And then maybe, I don't know, for a little while, maybe you just indulge yourself in the morning, right? Like maybe it's chocolate chip pancakes every day for a week to help you get in the practice of waking up at 7, because you only get to have them if you're up at 7 or something. That could work too.
Yeah. I mean, I feel you, because it's, I would love to want to be a morning person.
Another thing you can do is just redefine yourself, right? Like that's part of how I started getting good at getting up in the morning, was I was like, well, I'm just the kind of person who gets up in the morning. Like I'm a morning person, even though it wasn't true. Like I do that a lot, where I like make a decision and play above my head for a little while. And then all of a sudden I can do that thing that I've been sort of kind of lying about for a little while. Like that's a way to do it too.
All right. Let's see. We've got
a Bree question.
A Bree question. Okay.
Oh, good. And she says we'll go live.
All right. Let's bring up Bree.
Hi, how are you guys doing?
Good.
So the good news is I got a job after searching for many months. It is an in-person job, and it is something I have no experience doing. And even though it's seasonal, it's my first full-time job that's outside of performing arts. And I know it's really sad to be 28 years old and to never really have a full-time adult job. But that is my reality. And I am just terrified of messing it up. And especially since it's only been less than a year since I've been on my ADHD journey. I thought I was just bad at keeping jobs before in areas that I wasn't interested in. But now I know there is a reason for that. There is a reason why I'm always late to work, or, you know, if I am not set with strict boundaries, I always kind of push the limits of how much I can slack off and all these things. And one year I was fired 6 times in a job. So
at the same job?
Oh, no, from different jobs.
Oh, because I was going to say, that was really impressive. Like you must be very convincing to be able to get that job back 5 times.
No. I had 6 different part-time jobs.
Okay.
And I was either laid off or let go, or for various different reasons. Sometimes not my fault, but definitely like it was a string of bad luck. And so when I do have to take on like jobs that aren't related to, hey, I can talk to people and be entertaining, I get really scared that, you know, I'm not going to be able to keep it. And then it always ends up being a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Really, so let me ask you this. So as someone who had 21 jobs at the time they were 21, I look at that as...
Wait, what?
Right. I mean, I got fired from a job because I forgot that I had it. So, you know...
Wow.
You can't make this shit up, right?
No.
So I look at a lot of those jobs that I had as figuring out all the things that I'm not going to be doing in my life, right? Like retail, can't do it. Call center, what a joke. Like me at a call center, I have major auditory processing issues. Me at a call center is probably the worst possible job I could have had. Did pizza delivery. I did, I was a dishwasher. I worked at all kinds of retail places. So
right now if I may interject, I'm in a position where like a lot of us is we can't, beggars can't be choosers when it comes to work and financial stability. And like, even the fact that it's a seasonal job, like that still helps quell the fear of I'm going to be stuck for the rest of my life being a manager in a warehouse. But I don't really get to choose that, like, okay, this is not what I want to do. Yeah. I'm trying to deal with the fact that I'm going to have to be doing work that I'm probably not going to be interested in. And I need to be able to just keep it for 4 months. All
right. So a couple things here, Bree.
Yeah.
One, you were just recently diagnosed, you said?
Yeah, very recently. And I think I mentioned, I also have another disability. I'm visually impaired. So there's also the fear of, do I have enough vision for this job? Because I've never done work like this before.
So, Brie, you're first of all going through sort of a lot of stuff and dealing with a lot of stuff that you didn't even know you had. So it's sort of like you needed to get somewhere. And so you got on a bus, but no one ever gave you a bus route or told you where you were going. So you're like, oh, now I know why I'm on the struggle bus, because I have ADHD and I didn't know it. I have visual impairment and that's affecting me as well. So, you know, it doesn't even matter what age you are. You know, there's a lot, late 20s are a time where a lot of people, especially those with ADHD, are just now kind of beginning to launch into what they're going to be doing. And I think that as soon as we have this mindset of I should be at a different place in my life, like we're just making things harder for ourselves. We have to really meet ourselves where we're at with a lot of self-compassion and grace, and really recognize that all the things that have happened in the past, despite how hard they may have been, how frustrating they may have been, if you could find the learning in them, at that point, you can then be grateful that those things have happened. So what is it that you want to do? Because I'm of the belief, and I think Brendan might be as well, that when you have ADHD, we don't really have the luxury of doing jobs that we don't like.
Can I jump in? Because I think I can help you like your job.
Sure.
Right. Because we also don't have the luxury of not doing a job during a pandemic, economic downturn crisis. Like that's there too. So you might be in a situation where you just have to figure out how to love this job because that's what's there right now. Mm-hmm. So I want to play there for a second, and then we can circle back to where Eric was. So a couple of thoughts around on that, because I'm completely with Eric, both in terms of learning from failure and from you should love what you're doing. Like it'll be easier to do the thing if you love what you're doing. But also beggars can't be choosers, like you said. So some thoughts that I'm having. One is, and I don't know what this job is. Are you comfortable letting us know what the job is?
Sure. So I think the title is Quality Process Manager. Like
at a warehouse or something else?
It's at a fulfillment center. It's not Amazon, thank God. No offense to anyone working at Amazon. I just don't think they're a very moral company. But yeah, it's for like a seasonal holiday distributor called Uncommon Goods.
Okay.
And Uncommon Goods. They
they have great catalogs. I get this. I have this thing. It's like a single serving like berry rinser. It's like a coffee cup that has holes in the bottom, and I love it.
Yeah, they have really great products, and I enjoyed interviewing with the people in the company.
Brendan's like, you both have ADHD. I'm just trying to talk, and I keep interjecting.
Go ahead. So that's the job, and like literally the fact that I don't even know how to explain the title. That's how much I feel like, wow, I really did bullshit my way into getting this interview by just being a good talker.
All right. So here's a few thoughts on how you might be able to squeeze some lemonade out of this lemon. One thought I have is, and you should do this for the rest of your life, rather than looking at a job as just a paycheck, right? Be looking at it in terms of the skills that it's teaching you. Like how are you adding to your skill stack by having this job? Because then a 6-month experience doesn't feel like a joke and a waste because you got some skills out of it.
True. Yeah.
Some of the best jobs I've had recently, despite running my own business, I worked as a mental health clinician for 6 months. I worked as a special education teacher for 6 months, and I worked as a principal for 8 months. Oh my God, did I learn a lot from those jobs because I aggressively looked for the skills as I did them. And the thing that was cool about aggressively looking at the skills I was building, it increased my performance because I was being intentional about doing stuff while I was there. Like I did a better job, and I wasn't doing a better job for the money. I was doing a better job for the skill I was going to get because I was executing well. So that might be helpful in terms of what to do with this position. And I don't know what those skills necessarily are. Sounds like some of it is going to be organization and some of it's going to be talking to people, and managing people and that kind of stuff.
Lots of people managing. Like most jobs awesome. I've had lately, I haven't had to deal with a lot of people. So,
right. And then the other piece of that is, I recognize things are hard right now, but I'm not willing to give up on your career in the arts. I'm only willing to pause your career in the arts And that's what this is. This is a pause in your career in the arts while you go do something else while that career is paused. So another thing you can do while you're at this job is be thinking about what you can steal from it and bring back to your arts career. Being able to manage people well, that's huge. Whether you're an actor, a director, a producer, whatever it is that you are, learning how to navigate with and handle people is enormous. Also, just talking to people and like getting to know them, all of those people are characters for you to then be able to embody later whenever you go back to your career in the arts. Taking that kind of a lens might make this a more enjoyable experience than it otherwise would be.
Thank you. But the thing that I'm actually really, I appreciate everything you say. I think learning the skills is going to be really valuable and is going to keep me motivated to keep going to that job besides the paycheck. Mm-hmm. But the thing that I'm concerned about, or more like my hindrances with ADHD, which have made me lose jobs, which are pushing and constantly testing boundaries, and also impulsive and emotional regulation that has caused me to have difficulty in the workplace. Can you just be really transparent about trying to understand the boundaries? Instead of pushing, can you be like, I'm just trying to understand what my expectations are or something like that? Sure. So first of all, the structure of authority, like in general, like not going ahead and just doing what I think is right for the moment. And then another one is when it comes to attendance or tardiness, what I always do is like the first week I'll be on time, but then I'll like kind of sniff out how the management style is. And then I'll be like, oh, I'll be okay if I'm 20 minutes late, or, I can, push it to this. And nobody seems, because if there is no consequences, then I will try to get away with whatever I can. I don't know why I'm like this. I just always been like this.
So I want to share a quick story. So I recently read a book by Gabor Mate in the Realm of Hungry Ghosts. And he was talking about how when he was working at this psychiatric hospital, that the director there was really kind of frustrated with him for regularly being late. And he really was trying to work on this. And so what he said in the book that he did is he wrote a check to and gave it to his boss. And said, and it was something to the terms of, all right, so if I am late like this many times, you can deposit this check. And I forget if it was like a donation to something but what it was. But for him, it was like he needed that sort of like amped up, like there's an actual like consequence, but it's also like, cause he didn't want to take the approach of, oh, I have ADHD, I can't be on time. Like he was taking the approach of, oh, I have ADHD, it's hard for me to be on time, and I'm taking responsibility this way. Mm-hmm. So it is something that cause that's the thing. It's like, people often ask, well, I don't want to use my ADHD as an excuse. And I was like, good. We shouldn't use our ADHD as an excuse. Like if our job expects us to be on time, we need to be on time, right? Like it might sound harsh, but the world doesn't care that we have ADHD, right? Yeah. So we really have to figure out what it is that we need to do. And I always encourage people when they are looking for jobs is you need to interview them just as much as they are interviewing you. And I will tell you, as an employer, I want people to ask me hard questions about my place of like, what's it like to work here? Right. Because if they don't, like, I don't think they're really that interested in the job. So, when I have been employed in the past, I've always asked questions about like, what's the paperwork like? How much support do you have on the paperwork? If I ever got behind on the paperwork, I was making it very clear that paperwork is not necessarily my cup of tea.
Yeah. And you could even theoretically, you could say to your boss, like, hey, one of the things I've encountered as a challenge in the past is that like, if my boss isn't real clear and about like, hey, you're late, like from the first time that I'm late, then I tend to be late. But the bosses that kind of talk to me immediately about it, that I'm not late anymore because I have been spoken to. If you can just say that to him in whatever way feels comfortable, you might be able to get a better interaction. Because it's possible you've had bosses who are like, hey, Brie keeps coming late. What's going on with that? But they don't say anything to you. Yeah. And you think it's okay, or at least that you're not getting noticed or whatever, but they are noticing, they're just not communicating it with you. And the next thing you know, you're fired.
Like that.
Yeah. Because they're like, and it could be any number of reasons. They could have 100 things they're paying attention to. They could be like, oh, it's just this one time. And then they're like, oh, it's just this one time. And then they're like, wait a minute, we've had a bunch of junts this one times. Now I have to pay attention to this. And then they feel like a private investigator. So they're not talking to you about it because it's happened too many times. There's lots of reasons why that communication doesn't happen. But if you initiate it, then it's going to go more smoothly because you're taking that accountability from the jump.
Interesting. And like, I think I've never thought about it in that way because I'm afraid of like making myself vulnerable, being like, hey, I might mess up here. Because, you want, when you start a job, you want an employer to have confidence in you that you're going to be able to do the job well. Right. So to say, hey, I need you to ride me on being on time. That's an interesting approach.
Like the first time you're late, just go up to him and be like, hey, I'm late. I'm sorry. Like that way you're not sneaking in and feeling like you don't exist or don't matter. Because that happens too, right? I've been the person who's late a lot and sneaks in a lot. And then I start feeling like they don't like me just because they didn't say anything about me being late or whatever. And the next thing I know, I resent my boss. And it's just because I was late 5 times.
Or that like the work you're doing really isn't that important. It doesn't matter when you come in.
Yeah.
Or even asking like, hey, like this is something I struggle with. I am working on it. Is there any way I can make up my time if in the event I am late for work? And just have an open, frank conversation about it. It's if it is an issue, be in control of the conversation by you bringing it up first. Right. And it is always a risk to self-disclose ADHD in the workplace, so it's not always the best approach. And
I already know I have one disability, and that's already difficult enough to, a bit like, so what about colors? I don't see color.
But I am, from what you've already shared, though, you do have a lot of abilities. And I think one of the really important things is that we are working in our areas of strength. What's that Einstein quote that like, if we're a fish and
fish climbing trees.
Yeah. Fish climbing trees, right? Like if that's how they judge our intelligence, like we're going to feel dumb all the time.
Oh, did you hear Jessica on how to ADHD, her song?
Yeah.
That was so cute.
Yeah. And another thing that just leaning back into that arts part, are you an actress? Am I guessing that correctly?
Yes, I think I'm an actor. I'm a voice actor these days. I'm doing a lot of voice acting, and I'm still actively auditioning. It's just about like waiting for that next job to come through. Which
so
is as a guy right now with COVID.
As a guy who gets close to acting only because he plays Dungeons and Dragons.
Nice.
If you are having trouble engaging in this conversation, think back to a character you've played in the past who could have this conversation. And then embody that character, like use that persona to do the thing that would otherwise be hard. Yeah, that's a solid strategy.
I have used that specific strategy to manage some anxiety in social situations, right? Like, but create this sort of persona in my head. And it is a crazily effective brain hack for myself. It's figuring out, and this is for all things, I think, ADHD in life, keep trying stuff. Just keep trying stuff, right? And I think that if we really maintain a really curious approach to how the things we try are working, like we'll get there. Like it's going to take us longer than we want it to, because when you have ADHD, you want everything to work yesterday, right? But it's, just keep trying and have a really generous perspective of self-compassion, because beating ourselves up when we're on the struggle bus does not help.
Thank you, guys.
Oh, you bet. Thanks for your question. Let's take another quick break. And when we come back, we got a question about a performance improvement plan, which is probably a good part 2 to that other question. Yeah. So we will be right back. This podcast is brought to you by our patrons over at ADHDrewired.com/Patreon. As this podcast is free to you, the listener, it is not free to produce. I appreciate everyone who can financially support this podcast. I want to welcome 3 new patrons this month at the $25 a month level. They can join our monthly group coaching calls. That is 1 hour of coaching with me each month. If you are in a position to show your support for this podcast financially, you can do that by going to ADHDrewired.com and click the Patreon tab at the top of the page. Whatever amount you can give, I appreciate your support. And whenever you support ADHD Rewired on Patreon, you also get cool perks starting at just $5 a month. More and more patrons are becoming patrons because they want to take part in our monthly coaching calls, which you can do starting at just $25 a month. For those of you who do give at that level, your next group coaching call is Tuesday, October 27th at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. Our group coaching calls for patrons are every fourth Tuesday of the month at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. And if you can give at the $10 a month level, you can have access to the recordings of these patron coaching calls, plus a bunch of extra content like webinars and recordings of me playing piano. Plus, if you would like to get ad-free episodes for just $5 a month, let us know that by voting on our Patreon page. You don't have to be a patron to vote. Go to ADHDrewired.com/Patreon. But if right now you are not in a position to support this podcast financially, which I totally understand, consider leaving a review on your favorite podcast player. That support helps other people find this podcast. All of your support is appreciated. To become a patron, go to ADHDrewired.com/Patreon. Patreon is Patreon. Patreon is listener-supported podcasting. Go to ADHDrewired.com and click on that Patreon tab at the top of the page. And thanks. We are back for the third half of the podcast. So let's do, what's our next question here?
It's from Shailene. Any suggestions for someone who is realizing that they have had ADHD their entire life, but never been officially diagnosed, particularly as it applies to finding a provider to diagnose/help with medication?
Well, welcome to the club, as far as getting that diagnosis. And adults are, especially like the 40-somethings are the fastest demographic for people getting diagnosed now because we just know so much more about ADHD. So the particular question is about...
Can I piece this apart a little bit?
You bet, please.
First off, if you're not looking for medication stuff, like if you're just like, I think I have ADHD, I feel like I should get a diagnosis. Like if you're not going to do anything with that diagnosis, it might not be worth the time and money that you might have to go through to get that diagnosis. So just have that in the back of your head. It's possible the diagnosis will then open new doors and lead to new things and still be useful. But if you're listening to a podcast about ADHD, probably the diagnosis is not going to open a whole lot of doors because you probably already kicked those doors open on your own. So if you're not going to do anything with it, it may or may not be useful. I'm not saying don't pursue a diagnosis. I'm just saying think about how much time and money you have and whether or not this is going to be worth it. But that's not exactly what this question is asking because it specifically is asking about the follow-up stuff with medication and diagnosis. So I just wanted to piece that part out.
So are we looking at like how to find a provider or?
That's my impression. Like go to.
Well, I think it's always best to like hop into if you're part of any online communities and ask people that, maybe find people who are living in your area. But also now because of COVID, there's a lot more flexibility, with telehealth. Mm-hmm. But I think it's really, really important when you are looking for a provider, whether it's a therapist or a psychiatrist, that they really understand ADHD and work with it on a regular basis and stay on top of the research. Because working with providers who say they treat ADHD but don't really get it, and trust me, you will have the gut feeling within that first session if this person gets it or not. Like I promise you will, right? Trust that gut feeling. Give it 2 or 3 sessions at most. If you're like, I don't think this person gets it, then like trust that. But you can ask them like how much of your practice is working with people with ADHD? Because I think that when you are working with someone who really doesn't specialize in ADHD, I think it can often do more harm than good.
And you can even say stuff like, which of the ADHD big brains do you find the most compelling? right? Like whose work do you like the most? And if they're like, what ADHD big brains? Then you're like, it's been real. I'll see you later, right? Like that might be helpful too.
So you just want to make sure they say Brendan Mahan?
I'm not a big brain. I'm not.
So
I'm a medium-sized at best brain.
Hopefully that was helpful. All right, let's go Zora.
And before we go to Zora though, like also go to like the Chad website, go to Attitude Magazine. Like they have resources, they have providers and lists of names and stuff. Like there's online resources you can find that will point you to people in your state.
Yeah. And people who are on those directories, they typically pay to be on those directories, which is not a bad thing. That means they have an actual interest in working with the ADHD community. But if you're looking at something like Psychology Today, and I know I've said this on previous Q&As, but it's, I think, worth repeating. If like ADHD is one of like 10 plus specialties, they don't specialize in ADHD. Mm-hmm. So let's go to Zora's question. All right. How to motivate ourselves to work out at home as it's getting colder outside. Doing everything from home has gotten so boring. Truth.
Buy a sandbag.
Say more.
I bought a sandbag. What I bought was like a duffel bag with handles on it. And then it came with these smaller bags that each take like 10 pounds of sand in them. So I have a 40-pound bag of sand with handles on it, basically. And it's fun. Like it's just there and I pick it up and walk around the house with it on my shoulders. And this is not so useful in the cold, but 2 days ago, I literally just threw it across my yard. Like I just picked it up, threw it as far as I could, ran to it, picked it up, threw it as far as I could, ran to it. And I did that 3 times across my yard, which kicked my butt. So
do you have any video of this, Brendan?
No, I don't. But get like, maybe not a sandbag, but weird stuff that is also something that is good to exercise with that you can just have nearby that's fun and engaging is worth doing.
I would also say, and I've been debating whether or not I want to join the Peloton movement. It seems like a really good idea. It's not cheap though, but so you get this exercise bike that also is part of it though, is you get to take these live classes with instructors for it. So there's a lot of options out there. And I think that the market is going to continue to grow, especially now, to find things like this. Cause it's, there's YouTube videos and stuff you can watch, but I know for myself, if it's like anywhere in the realm of boring, if it's even near boring and I'm by myself, it's hard. It's hard. Cause I'm thinking about the same thing too. Cause I think I mentioned earlier, and for those of you who like to play that drinking game, for every time I mention pickleball, take a shot. Because pickleball is going to be going indoors, or at least it's going to be getting too cold to play outdoors, now. Like I'm worried because that's how I, it's my physical health and mental health. So it's cause I love it because it's a fun, exciting game. Any kind of accountability you can get to can be helpful, even if it's like you're going onto Zoom with somebody else to do some boring workout. Like, it makes it more engaging.
Yeah. Sign up for like Zoom yoga, Zoom martial arts, those kinds of things that you can do in a confined space on your own. That might be helpful. And specifically Zoom, right? Specifically a place where you're going to be seeing other people or at least another trainer. So there's accountability there. Doing like a video recorded yoga program is not the same as I'm going to go see Bernadette and she's going to guide me through Downward Dog.
All right, let's go to Hunter. Hunter asked, do you guys have any recent biohacks? And he capitalized recent. He doesn't want any of the old strategies.
Seriously.
Nothing that's ever been said before. He doesn't want any of that stuff because he's tried it already. Do you have any recent biohacks / exercise routines / meditation strategies, etc., that you've been implementing / experimenting with lately? I love that I'm not the only person that puts a lot of slashes in their like questions.
I'll be right back. Okay.
Brendan will be right back. Now we're all curious what he's going to do. I'm gonna outsource that question to the chat, and I'll read what any of you guys say because I actually can't think of anything. Brendan, everything okay over there?
This is a monkey ball.
Monkey ball.
It's amazing. I couldn't remember the name of it, so I had to go get it so I could see it. And I was like, I'll just go bring it back and show the people who are watching. So too bad for you, podcast listeners. This is a monkey ball. It's got a weight in it. So like the bottom comes off because you can get a weight to stick inside.
Oh, weird.
Yeah, I forget how much this weighs. What's cool about it is not necessarily the weight. It's the bungee cord that you attach to your door.
Whoa.
Yeah. So you like pull this towards you and do like twisting movements and that kind of stuff.
Right.
Right.
Snap back. So if you're like waiting for someone to
like I have to be, mine is actually on the door leading to my backyard. So I can't let the boys use it because there's literally a window in the door, but it's the only door that makes sense to use it in. And this will go right through it if they ever let go with any degree of elasticity happening.
Can you please just set up a real-time camera on that spot all the time?
But it's super fun to use. It's super fun to play with. And like the sandbag thing, like that's where I am right now, is trying to find stuff that's fun. And I'm also learning that I need the like physical communication of heavy stuff. Like over the summer, we got a deck put in and I shoveled like I think literally a ton of rocks and stuff into my backyard. And I felt so good after moving all these rocks because it was just putting it underneath the deck. And I was like, I feel amazing. Oh, it's because I've been carrying heavy loads of stuff like shovels and wheelbarrows full of rocks. And that got me doing more heavy stuff. That's why I got the sandbag. I have some kettlebells that sometimes if I'm stressed, I'll just pick up the kettlebells and stand there holding them. They're like 25 pounds each. And I'll just feel the weight of that pulling me down and anchoring me to the ground. And I put them down and off I go to do stuff. So that feedback and communication of heavy weights is really powerful for me.
It's good stuff. What's monkey ball? Spell it.
Monkey ball. MONKII.
Ball. BALL.
I'm pretty sure it's called the monkey ball. If you go to monkey.com or whatever, it's probably not the only thing they make, but
that's great.
It looks like a ball.
That's great.
It's cool.
So I hope that we can say that is the answer in the recent biohacks. Well, we're going to say it's an answer and we're going to move on. Let's see. I'm having trouble with my ADHD meds, increasing my blood pressure. I started taking blood pressure meds to lower my blood pressure. Are there any meds that will not increase blood pressure?
Talk to your doctor.
There is an ADHD a non-stimulant medication that my brain is telling me that it's not going to give me access to the name right now. That was actually initially a blood pressure medication. And then, people who were taking it, noticed that they had better focus. Intuitive, I believe that might be right.
I on purpose don't know.
So I'm going to say that I am not 100% certain on any of those at the moment because my brain is just getting scattered. But yeah, so that is a thing. And also I know that there's been some stuff that studies have looked at what is in the sort of the tolerable range for higher blood pressure while on stimulant medication. And I think that there is, that we're seeing that we can allow more of the little bit higher blood pressure than we originally thought. So it's just something to kind of look at with your doctor. But I know that's very like newer kind of emerging research. All right, let's go with, I think we give time for maybe one more. I would say two, but I'd be overshooting it. It's my time optimism.
What is a positive and healthy way to include our significant others in our short and long-term planning when they have a strong aversion to planning? Talk to them in advance about how they want to be included in short and long-term planning. They might have an aversion to, hey, what do you think we should do about Thanksgiving, right? That might be tricky for them, but they might be totally fine with you saying, hey, we're doing this tomorrow, as opposed to what do you want to do tomorrow? So some of it might be the way in which you're communicating about it. Find out if there's a methodology that's more effective. Find out why they have such a strong aversion to planning too. Like you kind of have to do some background conversations to build a foundation to where you can have a conversation about planning. You got to figure out where the pitfalls are first.
Yeah, and dialogue. I mean, try to find out what that's about, and also communicate what it means to you to have that person involved in planning. Mm-hmm. There's one more I want to answer, because it's one of these is it just me questions? No, it's not. And that's all the time we have for today. Just kidding. All right, the actual question is, Matthew has a habit of buying stuff off Amazon with no intention of keeping it. Then returning stuff ends up being more complicated than expected. Is this common among folks with ADHD? Any tips? Maybe make purchases after running by my fiance. So yeah, absolutely one of the many ways that we pay the ADHD tax is by getting things that we need to return and never returning it. I have done this more than I would like to say. So one of the things that I have done, if it's something, let's say I want to get because I don't want to have to go back to the store, maybe I want to get I'm going to use one, but I want to bring 5 of them home to see which one that I actually want to use, which means I have to return 4. I will actually add in my calendar the time to return before I even buy the thing. So that's a thing. Also, I recently learned after having to return a bike light, that when you set up for the return and they're going to pick it up, it will be in the morning the next day. I wasn't ready for them, so they dropped off the return label just on my front stoop, and then I had to figure out the next step, because it would have been way easier if I was just fully ready. So when you go to do that, be ready to put it on your porch right away, or your front step if that's a thing that you can do. But yes, this is a really, really, really common thing.
Yeah, I've trained myself. Let's go with trained myself. I've trained myself so that I feel like when I click add to cart, then I feel like I bought it, which means I don't buy as much stuff because I click the add to cart and then I don't actually check out with it. So the next day I look at my cart and see how much of that stuff I still care about and want. And it's like none of it, almost none of it do I still care about. And if I'm like, maybe I care about it, then I click save for later. And it gets saved for later. And then I have to move it up to my cart in the future in order to buy it. And then I don't buy it. So if that's helpful, that might be a strategy that works for other people. It takes a little while to make it feel like it's still worth the dopamine to click add to cart as opposed to all the way through to buy it. But that works for me to reduce. I don't have to return anything because I'm not buying as much.
So thank you, Brendan, for hanging out with me again, and hopefully we'll be back next month with Will back with us. Hopefully Power will be back on by that time.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed.
No fire anymore.
The world has not completely burned down. And we'll catch you next month. We do this every second Tuesday of the month. And if you're watching this on Facebook and you're like, ooh, I want to be a part of that, go to ADHDrewired.com and click on the events tab, and you can register for our live Q&As that we do same time, same place every month. This is Eric Tivers. Thank you for listening, and congratulations for making it to the end. ADHD Rewired is more than just a podcast. We are a community focused on learning, growing, and connection. The website is ADHDrewired.com. You can find summaries and additional resources for each episode. You can apply to our free and secret Facebook community. You can learn more about ADHD Rewired's intensive online video-based coaching and accountability groups, and sign up for my email newsletter to get exclusive content you won't get anywhere else. It's all at ADHDrewired.com. While you're there, click the Patreon button. If you're a regular listener and you're still listening to my voice, consider making a monthly contribution by becoming a patron through our Patreon page. If you are able to financially support my work, it would mean a lot. This show is free to listeners, but it is not free to produce. And patrons get really cool perks. You can follow me on Twitter at Eric Tivers. You can like our Facebook page at facebook.com/ADHD Rewired. If you're a coach, therapist, or related professional, connect with me on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/Eric Tivers. You can also also subscribe to ADHD Rewired on YouTube. And you can subscribe to ADHD Rewired on YouTube and see select interviews and some other videos I've posted. Podcasts change lives. You can make a difference in someone's life by spreading the word about this podcast. Mention it in your online communities on Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, or wherever you hang out online. And be sure to share it with your friends and your family and your clients, as well as your coaches, therapists, and doctors. And if you're a coach, therapist, doctor, or ADHD support group leader, and you would like a pack of podcast postcards to hand out, you can request those at my website, ADHDrewired.com. And if you're a member of CHAD or any other ADHD support group, please be sure to tell them about this podcast. You can even show them how to download it on their phone. You know, you might be the person that turns somebody on to a podcast for the very first time. And if you really love this episode, please consider hitting share on your podcast player. I'm only one person, and I count on you to help me spread the message. One of the biggest things that you can do to support this podcast and to help other people discover it is to leave an honest rating and review on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or any other podcast app that accepts ratings and reviews. And don't forget to hit subscribe on this podcast on your podcast app so new episodes are automatically pushed to your favorite podcast app. Looking for more ways to listen and learn? Get a free audiobook and a 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/ADHD Rewired. Not sure where to start? In no particular order. Check out Atomic Habits by James Clear, The Body Keeps Score by Bessel van der Kolk, 10% Happier, and Meditation for Fidgety Skeptics. These are both by Dan Harris. Change Your Questions and Change Your Life by Marilee G. Adams. The One Thing by Gary Keller and Jay Papasan. Procrastinate on Purpose by Rory Vaden. The Four Tendencies by Gretchen Rubin. Do you have trouble asking for help? Listen to The Art of Asking by Amanda Palmer. It's one of the best produced audiobooks I've ever heard. If you're looking for something a little bit more, say, magical, I unexpectedly fell in love with the Harry Potter series. And I don't usually listen to those kinds of books, and I loved it. And of course, if you haven't yet boarded the Brene Brown bus yet, check out Brene Brown's books, starting with The Gifts of Imperfection, Daring Greatly, Rising Strong, The Power of Vulnerability. And if you're an entrepreneur or leader in any capacity, check out her 2018 book, Dare to Lead. And Brene still is my most wanted guest, so if you know Brene, and you would be so kind to make that connection for me, I would be really, really grateful. You know who else I would like to have on the show? You. Click the podcast tab at ADHDrewired.com and then click the Be a Guest button at the top of that page and schedule a 15-minute pre-interview. This is Eric Tivers, reminding you to keep learning, keep growing, and keep connecting. Self-care is not selfish, and no matter what gets done or doesn't get done, at the end of the day, you are still enough. And no matter how hard it feels, we can do hard things. Thanks for listening. I'll catch you next week.